The pattern, if you want to put it into a simple sentence, is the longer a church exists, the more concerned it becomes with self-preservation and the less concerned with its original purpose. Again, it's an organizational function. You see this in new businesses that start up, and there's a passion of the entrepreneur to focus on the mission. And then over time, more and more of the employees begin wondering about the retirement pay, and they begin talking about less hours. And it's just more and more of a focus inward and less on the original passion of outward focus. But the longer a church exists, the more concerned it becomes with self-preservation, the less with its original purpose. And the question is, how are churches renewed to begin new life cycles? That really is the whole question about church growth, church revitalization, church health, is how do we begin new life cycles? The process, we find, is typically in the dynamic of an intervention event. An intervention event in a life cycle interrupts the normal pattern. The normal pattern is growth, plateau, and decline. So there's something that has happened, either intentionally or unintentionally, in the life of a church that has begun a new life cycle. Intervention events. Some of the possible intervention events, and some of you may have seen others that we don't have on the list here, but I listed the 10 that came to my mind. Some, by the way, are controllable, as you'll see. Some are uncontrollable, but they are or have the potential to be intervention events. Again, these are in your notes if you want to just pick up a copy and don't have it. One is a change of pastors. We sometimes see churches that are on the flat or the backside of the life cycle have a new pastoral change with a new vision, new enthusiasm, new direction, and in fact, a new life cycle that begins. Sometimes a church crisis will begin a new life cycle. Gary this morning talked about the church that burned down. I know of a church in Philadelphia, the same thing happened to that church. The church was on the flat and backside of a life cycle, and the pastor said, our church just burned to the ground. He said it was the best thing that ever happened to our church. So when you see crises come up in the church, there's the typical tendency to wring your hands and ask, what do we do? How do we survive this? It may well be that it could be the best thing that has happened to your church in a long time, at least for many years. Church crisis. Planting a church. Many churches that begin a new life cycle find that happens as they begin mothering a daughter church. And churches that, in fact, have been plateaued or declining in worship attendance can often see their own church begin to grow as they are confronted with the question of why are we here, what is our mission, and starting a new church not only helps the daughter church, but the mother church as well. Renewal of the pastor. Perhaps some of you who are pastors today will leave this conference with a sense of renewal and enthusiasm, and that could well be, over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, this event could be the beginning of a new life cycle in your church. Close and open the church. We see a number of churches that have actually come to the end or are approaching the end of their life cycle and have essentially decided, we're done, we're past the point of no return. They will shut down and not walk away, but the denomination or the district or some of the people in the church will say, we're going to begin over again. And over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, they'll go about the process essentially of planting a new church. And I know of a number of churches where that new church has begun out of the ashes of the old church, a new life cycle. Renewal of the laity, sometimes that will happen in terms of the congregation where there's a spark in the life of one person perhaps, or a group, or a Sunday school class. Denominational intervention, a number of you all are interventionists, either denominational or independent, and you can be the beginning of a new life cycle as you understand the dynamics and intervention events. Outside consultants, relocation, there's some churches that simply can't grow where they are. Lyle Schaller says that 10% of the churches in America can't grow where they currently are, and they need to relocate or plant a new church or plant an extension. Begin another worship service is one of my favorite. It's one of the most controllable events in beginning a new life cycle. New worship service with a new style, new target audience, new music, and a new life cycle. Intervention events are no guarantee of a turnaround, but they are windows of opportunity. That's an important point. Just because a new pastor comes doesn't mean the church is going to begin a new life cycle. Just because you have a church that burns down or a crisis in the church doesn't mean you're going to begin a new life cycle. But they are windows of opportunity. And as consultants and pastors, it's important for you to realize, I think, that there are certain times in the life of a church where they are more open and more able to begin a new life cycle than others.